and we do it inline, overflow, hidden, and notice that forces it to contain its floats, and you'll also notice that it fixes the issue that we have right here. So we can either manually specify this, or we can apply a class of clearfix. Watch what happens if I do it right here with the header, class of clearfix, and if I reload the page, that is going to work, and that's because the 960 framework provides a class of clearfix. And what that does is it gets the content after and it clears it. And this is what we call the clearfix hack. And it essentially forces the element to contain any floats. It's kind of a more error-proof way of doing it rather than doing overflow hidden. Feel free to do whatever you like though. If we want to give this some breathing room, why don't we come back to style and we'll say main, margin top, maybe 30 pixels. And that's going to push it down ever so slightly. And also, why don't we apply some margin bottom as well? So I'm going to use the shorthand, 30 pixels on the top and bottom, and 0 on the right and left. However, again, that's not going to take shape because we have floated all of the elements within this main section, the exact same thing. So again, you can apply a class of clearfix, or if you use a CSS preprocessor, if you increase your skills, you can do that without adding these extra classes. And that's generally what I do. And now you can see that is contained to those floats. So it makes sense that our heading and our navigation should probably follow the same format as what we have right here. So let's come back and adjust this. The heading section will have a grid 8 and the nav will be grid 4. And now if we want to make sure that this lines up perfectly with this box, let's apply a background color again, just so we can see what we have going on. We're running out of nasty colors. And I'm going to place this up here. Reload. Notice that the lines are correct, but the list items aren't. And that's because a margin left for each list item is being applied. So you could say margin left is 0, and that's going to push those over. And then you could apply margin right to add the spacing back in. So now we can get rid of that. And our lines are nice and neat. Let's do a next section within our main content where we want to have perhaps 3 or 4 columns within it. And within our primary section, we know it's set to grid 8 is the width. So now we know we can have 4 sections with grid 2. And notice I used the word section. Well, that makes sense to use a section element. And I'm going to give it a class of grid 2. And next within here, I'm going to add a little more dummy text. Some editors have what we call lorem ipsum text built in by default. Reload that, and that's probably way too much. Why don't we seal it off right here? That looks good. And now I'm going to duplicate this 3 times so that we add up to 4 grids. Now, if I reload it, it looks a little off. Well, how is that possible? Why is this one dropping to the bottom? And it's because there is margin right applied to each grid, and that's what creates the spacing right here. So what we have to do is specify that the very last one shouldn't have any margin right at all. If I inspect element and we are on this last section, if I set margin right to 0, and then we go to the very first one and we set margin left to 0, you'll see that that jumps up then. Now 960 provides helpful classes for this, which we call alpha and omega. And think you say alpha, omega in sequence, so it works left to right. We can set alpha, and this will set the margin left to 0. And the very last one, omega, will set the margin right to 0 on this one. And if I reload, now those are all contained. And this is really neat because you could then, if you have lots of sections right here, we could repeat this exact same thing. And now you quickly have a column structure and you didn't have to do this on your own. And of course, you would probably want to provide some padding within. So next, why don't we provide some headings? In Sublime Text, I can be clever because we have access to multiple cursors. So I'm going to select this P, hit Control-Command-G on the Mac, and it's going to select every instance of them. And then I'm going to hit up, and right here we will add perhaps a heading 4, and we'll add some generic text. Multiple cursors are amazing. Definitely use an editor that supports them. If I reload, now we have headings for each one.